It's My Nerd World and Depeche Mode, the podcast. This week, the one about the lyrics. Why Depeche Mode is so unique, the lyrics and songs, and how they grow off of Memento Mori. Will the European tour bring changes to the stage and set? Plus, your listener feedback.
Hello, this is Martin Gore from Depeche Mode.
Hi, this is Dave Gahan from Depeche Mode, and you are listening to
My Nerd World.
Welcome to it. I'm your host, Jon Justice. Glad you are checking out the episode once again this week. As always, if you want to email me, talkshownerd@gmail.com. And if you want to support Depeche Mode, the podcast, and you read and you like science fiction, check out my science fiction space opera series, EMBARK. That's available on Amazon.com under Jon Jon Justice or at mynerdworld.net. I have no idea why we have not gotten the single release for Ghosts Again, nor have I received any sort of confirmation whether or not those April 1st rumors about the pressings for the vinyl of the single were screwed up, and that's why the single has been delayed. We know that Dave and Martin certainly were listening to the remixes, and we should be getting remixes. There's still lists that are floating around of the potential tracks for the single release. I'm just very surprised, and I hope that as these interviews continue to pop up, that one of these interviewers will ask him, hey, when are we getting the single release? I just want to hear remixes for Ghosts Again. This song, Ghosts Again, and the album Memento Mori has zero burn for me whatsoever. I still am not listening to any other music other than Memento Mori, and that really has not happened since going back to, again, I keep going back to Ultra, Songs of Faith and Devotion, Violator, music for the masses. I mean, I don't think I couldn't tell you since then. I don't even think I listened to Ultra as much as I have been listening to Memento Mori. And there's been something unique about not just tracks off Memento Mori, but a couple of the tracks from even Spirit that have a bit of magic's not the right word. You know, the lack of burn of getting bored with them. They're crafted in such a way that I continue, even after just dozens of listens, finding something new and suddenly finding myself gravitating towards songs that I wouldn't think that I would. I want to talk a little bit about this and some thoughts about the conclusion of the North American warm-up shows, and then I've got a lot of listener feedback that I'll dive into. There was an email that I got last week, and I want to say that it was from Chad, but if I'm getting that wrong, I apologize. But hi, Chad, anyways, and apologize to the person that wrote the email. But they broke down the different phases that fans go through when it comes to Depeche Mode, and I really agreed with a lot of what they had to say. I'm in that I've fallen in love with Memento Mori phase, and I'm at that part where I'm gravitating towards, while still listening to the album as a whole, when I've got particular moments where I've got just enough time to hear a song or two going about my daily business, which songs am I gravitating towards? When I first get in the car, is there a particular song that I want to listen to first? Is it the entire album? The one song that I suddenly find myself gravitating to that I really didn't expect to is Speak to Me. Now, again, this is coming from a place where I really liked that song. It just isn't a song that I would necessarily expect that I would specifically go and seek out when I only have a moment to listen to a track or two, as I mentioned. That had been reserved, certainly for Ghosts Again, which is one that just gets a constant repeat from me. I mentioned it last week, still holds true. That song, to me, is on par with Enjoy the Silence. My only complaint on it is that I just wish there was more. And I wish as a whole, and I'll talk a little bit more about this in a moment, I wish we got an instrumental version of Memento Mori. I've never wanted an instrumental version of a Depeche Mode album before until this album, because there's just so much going on with the music. I listen to the instrumental version of Ghosts Again all the time. more so than I probably listened to any other instrumental by Depeche Mode. So Speak to Me is one that I've definitely been gravitating towards as of late. The reason why is because I watched a recent interview with a British journalist, music journalist, and forgive me, I think he was from The Enemy, but I'm not 100% sure. Really, really good conversation. But Dave got into a bit of the recording process and talked about, and he's mentioned this on several interviews, about how he was sitting on a beach, I believe in Long Island or wherever he lived in New York, and he was all by himself, and the lyrics kind of came to him for Speak to Me. Then when they got into studio, they decided they would record this as one of the songs that he presented. It took on a bit of a different vibe. He worked specifically with James Ford and Marta Solongni. And in this interview, he talked about Marta's use of tapes, and they've talked about this a bunch in the interviews, her use of sort of looping the tapes, and he said how she was specifically sending these unique patterns and the tape loops to him while he was singing the song. The interviewer hit the nail on the head. He originally said it sounded like something from Blade Runner, but then sort of gave it more of a Hans Zimmer type vibe description, and that prompted me to want to go and revisit the song right after the interview, and then suddenly I found myself gravitating towards it more and more. The other song is one that I really never expected would land for me, and that is My Cosmos Is Mine. Dave also said something else in that interview. He was just talking about Martin writing that song, and actually he got into a bit of what he felt was going through Martin's mind based off the lyrics, what we deal with within society, how things are affected, and how he wants this part of him to not be impacted. My cosmos is mine. Stop messing with me, without going and repeating the lyrics. And having listened to the song, again, dozens and dozens of times already, knowing contextually one could take it from that, I just found myself connecting with that song more so than I had since the first time that I had heard it. Especially with the job that I do Monday through Friday as a talk show host and having to cover the nonsense of everyday life, that song is really beginning. The song "My Cosmos Is Mine" is really beginning to speak to me. You see what I did there? Yeah. If I had a rim shot, I would have played it. What songs like that are impacting you off the album? What is your relationship with Memento Mori right now? Again, I'm in that. I've fallen in love with Memento Mori, and now we're in this relationship. And it's so unique to Depeche Mode. I don't experience this with any other band. Now, this could simply be a byproduct of I listen to Depeche Mode more than I do any other band, but just no other band has ever connected with me on this type of level before. Even those other bands in my life that I really, really love and listen to all the time, apart from all my time devoted with Memento Mori right now. There's a phenomenon that takes place, and I compare it to the way that I experienced Depeche Mode records, and specifically new ones, this may be a really bad comparison, but I'm going to make it anyways. Playing video games. I like to play video games, specifically Star Wars video games. If not, I'm playing my NASCAR game. But Star Wars video games, and when I'm playing campaigns, and I'm not great at them, I always got to put them on the easiest level, but I enjoy playing them. When I'm playing them and I get stuck, typically if I walk away and I come back, I can figure out how to get out of the level. Like you find something new you didn't see before. And I have that same experience with Depeche Mode songs. I've listened to, for example, like Cover Me. I don't even know how many times. It's one that right now I've been listening to Speak to Me every time I go to bed. But it used to be since the release of Spirit, it used to be Cover Me. The end instrumental, I've mentioned this before, but it's relevant to this, to this commentary. I hear something different, like every time I hear that instrumental portion of Cover Me. Almost to the point where I can't even repeat it in my head if I'm singing the song in my head, just because there's so much going on with that, in the way that is composed. And in something very similar too, like Speak to Me seems like almost like the spiritual brother to that to that song. But I'd love to hear from you and sort of what is your experience, like I mentioned, with the song right now. Are you having similar things happen as you listen to this album? talkshownerd@gmail.com, or you can leave a comment on YouTube if you're listening there. So the warm-up shows are wrapping up, I believe, in New York City. The European dates won't start until May. What is your expectation as the tour, I guess, officially kicks off? Again, these have all been warm-up shows, which is... Has this been done before? I mean, typically, from what I remember, like when Depeche Mode's gone on tour and they've done warm-up shows, they've been more of like smaller venue shows that have been attached to like radio station promotions. I could be wrong, and feel free to correct me, but this seems like the first time they've done like a full leg, and they've dubbed them as being warm-up shows. So if they are warm-up shows, was that specifically simply because they were doing select dates? Whereas I know when they head to Europe, they're doing some 34 shows, and then they're going to return back to the States for a lot more shows. So do you expect the set list to change? Do you expect the stage to change? And certainly, if you have any inside info to share, you can email me and let me know. But I'm just wondering what you think. Was it just a way to label these first opening shows and the tour officially kicking off in Europe as warm-up shows? And if this has been done before as they've gone out on tour, feel free to let me know. The opening acts for the European dates were announced, Cold Cave being the big one, but honestly, I've never heard of any of these bands before. I mean, so much so that I didn't even, my apologies, but I didn't even grab the list of the bands that were announced for the European dates. So if you want to comment on any of those, or maybe point me in a direction if any of those bands that you know of are worth listening to, if you've seen them, if you're going to these European shows, please feel free to drop me an email. Again, talkshownerd@gmail.com. All right, let's get to your listener feedback this week. Caroline from Canada writes, well, first, when she gave her title, she said she laughed when she saw her name was used on one of the songs on the album. Anyway, Carolyn writes, I've been a Depeche Mode fan since their first album, but never saw a live show until this one. I was blown away and will get tickets to the November 2nd Montreal show. I live in a region, which means a minimum 5-hour drive to shows by big bands, New Brunswick, Canada. I loved the performance of Wagging Tongue and was very happy with the playlist. Never Let Me Down Again is my favorite all-time song, and they put it in an epic performance for all of us, judging by the audience response and participation. I hope everybody's gotten over raising their cameras up and recording the show. That's one thing that I watch the videos of the concerts, and if you do that, it's fine. To each their own, but I hope I'm not standing next to you. I want to experience it. I don't want to stand there and record it on my phone and watch it through my phone screen. I want to watch the show. I like the old days. I always listened to their music, Caroline goes on to say, but knew nothing of their personal lives. With my DM addiction in full force, I will spend my time listening to podcasts about DM and their music now. Easy to do because my ultimate favorite band is U2, and they're not releasing any new material this year due to the injured drummer, Larry Mullen Jr. Of course, a bit of competition by The Cure if an album is released. Hoping for a slightly different playlist in the fall just because. Thanks for your interesting podcast, Caroline. Thank you, Caroline, for the email. David Watwood writes, whoops. Sorry, my page got lost. Who remembers when K-Rock first ever started playing Personal Jesus on the radio before the single was actually released and they played the acoustic version? I do. I remember. Wait, I do. And at the time, I was like, did Depeche Mode give up synthesizers? Yeah, and I've told the story before. I'll tell it again. I remember riding on my bicycle, listening to a recorded cassette version of the acoustic version of Personal Jesus, and then when they finally released, I remember listening in my bed in, I wasn't in Anaheim. Where was? Oh, Santa Ana. In Santa Ana, in California. I remember lying in my bed hearing K-Rock play First Personal Jesus for the first time with my headphones on, and just shocked at the produced version as it was bouncing back and forth in dynamic stereo through my headphones. It was such an incredible experience. Loved it. So I remember, David. Chad writes, I remember my dad telling me about the Black Celebration 1986 concert, and I'm 13 years old, and my first ever concert was the concert in San Jose, California on March 25th at the SAP Center. Forever I will remember that concert, and I will forever thank my dad. This summer we're going to see Tears for Fears in Seattle, Washington. Awesome. Thank you for that, Chad. Gustavo writes, I thought I was the only one who associates Caroline's monkey to Policy of Truth. Yes, there is something in a vibe of the song, a kind of Midnight City thing. Yes, Midnight City I use as the closing music to my weekly radio show. That's the song that plays when I know I only have a minute left before the show is over. So thank you for that, Gustavo. Tokyo Skyline, who I can thank for the intro to the show. That is Tokyo Skyline. Piano Room reminds me of the time they performed one Caress with the string quartet at Crystal Palace gig in 1983. I remember, yes, they did. So I remember I was blessed enough to see them perform one Caress with a string quartet at one of the Forum Los Angeles shows. And that was pretty awesome. Thank you for that. Hero Protagonist, maybe it's just me, but when the onstage lamp lights turned orange during Walking in My Shoes, it kind of reminded me of the orange loudspeakers they used during Music for the Masses. I seriously doubt it was intentional, but it made me smile. Thank you for that. Nina Wilder writes, made it to the concert. Oh boy, when those lights went out and they walked on stage, I was so close to tears. No, I was in tears. The show was magical. And then to listen to the BBC orchestra versions of Walking in My Shoes and Ghosts Again, got emotional again. What is it with this band? Sigh. Yeah, I know, I'm with you. Again, love listening to you, and thank you for your podcast. Thank you, Nina. I appreciate that. Tool, 46 and 2. I mentioned this last time, but I get that reference. Tool writes, dude, exclamation point, thank you. Exclamation point again, thank you. You are right. This is a very cool and special time. Your podcast is equally special as you're a hard fan that resonates across all generations while highlighting the magical era. Ha ha. I, as you, am having a blast with this release and its impact on all of us. This is such a fun ride. Cheers to you, and thank you. Keep killing the podcast. Oh, and these BBC recordings are just jaw-dropping. You are so right on Walking on My Shoes. Holy cow. Tool 46 and 2, thank you so much for the kind words. Made my day when I received that the first time, and made my day again just now. David Hudson writes, Don't Say You Love Me is perfect for this format, BBC Piano Room, and would have been a great addition. Getting back to the European tour, I really hope that they include more songs off Memento Mori. It would be a mistake if they didn't, in my opinion. Violator 90 says, I agree, 2023 reminds me of the good old days. I'm a diehard fan since 1985 and 86. It's such an excitement in the DM community all over the world at this moment with the fantastic Memento Mori and the ongoing tour. Feeling blessed that we've once again can enjoy a new album and seeing them live. I am feeling like a teenager all over again, and I'm 52 years old. They are the greatest band of all time. Love them to bits. I have a story to tell. Thank you so much for that, Violator 90. I have a story to tell at the end of the episode here. Totally forgot until you brought that up. So just going to put a little mental footnote in that as we move on to Jeremy Casper. I just want to say this here. Memento Mori is a solid album. It's really, really good. But why couldn't they give it a couple more ingredients that it needed to be even better? Two things. One, an instrumental track. They've done this with so many other albums. Why couldn't Martin sit down and revive an old one that he never used, or come up with a new one and put his heart and soul into it? And two, we needed one more Martin song track. Soul With Me is good. It's growing on me. But just one more. Something as good as Home. The bottom line. Somebody, A Question of Lust. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter too. Just another solid Martin Gore song track. I like every song on Memento Mori. If only they would have added an instrumental track somewhere and a second Martin track. That would have made the album absolutely perfect. Just had to share that. Don't disagree, Jeremy. If I had a chance to interview the band, I would ask them both those questions. Why no instrumental and why just one Martin song? Lana Hughes writes, had a comment with regards to the negative comments about the band albums. I had this person thinking it must be them as they used the same terminology, saying I was blind. I'm afraid I bit back and told that person off, stating that just because I think the album is a masterpiece and he doesn't, in no way means that they are right and I am wrong. Wrong. See what I did there? I did. I posed the question that if they feel the way they do, why are they even listening to DM? We all have different opinions, which is okay. But this person shouldn't be telling people who appreciate the fact that DM are still making music, still doing tours, and are enjoying their work during COVID and the numerous lockdowns. I was working from home for months in isolation on my own. In that time, I rediscovered DM, and I was listening to nothing but the entire Depeche Mode catalog. And their music got me through it all. I make no apologies for believing that Memento Mori is a masterpiece, because as far as I'm concerned, it is. And no one will convince me otherwise. No matter how jaded they may be as a fan, and I use that term loosely, of the band. I will be traveling from the UK alone to Berlin in July to see my first DM show. And if they tour the UK in 2024, I will be doing as many shows as I can get to. Keep up the fun in the podcast. They brighten the listening experience. Thank you for that. I really do appreciate it. And let's see here. Nope, just a couple more. Or is this? Oh, no, I do have one more. This is all from Jason. Jason writes, a busy and exciting weeks for you, all things Depeche Mode and Star Wars being announced and release. So the band has a 1-month break on the horizon. What do you expect during the break in the upcoming months? Will we finally see an announcement of the release of the physical edition of Ghosts again? And is it too soon to be getting details of the next single? Will another video drop of the Vinegar Hill sessions? Yeah, I haven't mentioned that on the show, but the Vinegar Hill session of Ghost Again was actually really, really good. Seek that out if you haven't already. I'm hoping for the announcement of the UK and the rest of Europe arena shows. Maybe that's too soon and probably won't be announced until June. I am expecting to see a minor set list change for the European stadium shows, maybe 2 permanent replacements and 2 or 3 other songs that they will swap out for those venues they are playing more than one night at. Good point. Also, check out this remix of Caroline's Monkey by TSF on YouTube. I did. It's pretty cool. Jason writes, it's one of the best remixes I've heard of a DM song, official or unofficial. The rest of the remix album is quite good as well. Fixing that one issue I had with Memento Mori, the cheap-sounding 90s snares they use on most of the tracks that stick out like a sore thumb in most songs. The snares now sound as if they belong and sit well with those songs. May the nerd be with you, Jason. Thank you for that, Jason. I appreciate it. So before I wrap things up, I want to tell you a quick story. And it's like only a story that could happen among Depeche Mode fans. So I believe he started the global Depeche Mode fan club. And as a matter of fact, there's a friend, a couple of friends that I made. Matt, what's going on, Matt? Hope you're enjoying walking your dog, dude. So Matt, I'm going to see Depeche Mode with in Denver in November. Also made a friend, Jeff, who lives in my former neck of the woods in Tucson, Arizona. I've been in contact with him as he's been going around and seeing the band as well. So when Jeff went up to Sacramento to see the show, there was a global Depeche Mode global fan meetup taking place at a restaurant prior to the opening night show up in Sacramento. So Rob Rome, I believe, is the individual who started that group. Okay, so I've exchanged some Twitter comments with Rob in the past. He may have even emailed the show at one point in time. So I knew he lived in California, and that was about it, though. And there was just this familiarity that I had with him. And I just figured it was because of just, Depeche Mode being Depeche Mode. And, he lived in California, so whatever. So I happened to be on Instagram, and I went to his Instagram page. And suddenly I realized that it was a lot more than just a sort of casual connection through this experience of Memento Mori. Years ago, going back to like 93, and I still haven't been able to figure out where the cross-section of fans met. But I went to this club with some friends to go see this band called Life of Debauchery. And I can't remember what the venue was, but I remember, and I knew I knew the guy that was, that was this band. We didn't spend a ton of time together, but we were kind of casual friends that ran in the same circles. I'll never forget the banner up in the background and this really cool show that he did of original music, and even tailored it a bit to Depeche Mode shows where he had some more upbeat songs and then did some acoustic numbers in the beginning of it. So I'm going through Rob's Instagram feed because I just had this sneaking suspicion, because Rob makes music today, and good music too. You should definitely go and check it out. And I'm going through his Instagram feed, and I found this old video clip of Rob doing a Depeche Mode tribute going back to the 90s. I went, oh my gosh, that's the guy. And so I ended up messaging him through Instagram, and I was throwing names of friends that I ran with at that point in time, and none of them were sticking. So we still have not been able to sort of land on where the cross-section of friends that we knew were from. We were both living in the same area of Anaheim. We were both going to similar clubs at the time, specifically Club Post Nuclear down, I believe it was like Newport Beach, or heading down towards Newport Beach. And then Cloud 9 at Knott's Berry Farm, though I didn't spend a ton of time there. Club Metro in Riverside. So I had to laugh because while we weren't like good close friends, there was a time that we've crossed paths enough to where I went and saw him live at one point in time. And the only reason I ended up finding it out was because I saw the picture on Instagram and I was like, I think that's the same guy. So I Googled Rob Rome and Life of Debauchery, and then sure enough, his past musical work popped up and the timeline of him under that particular moniker came up. So it's just one of those Depeche Mode stories that like you only get if you're a fan of Depeche Mode. Probably not true. Maybe there's Coldplay fans, Cure fans, Duran Duran fans that go through something similar. Maybe that's a topic for another show. Are there any other fandoms that even come close to the unique fandom that is the Depeche Mode fandom? Feel free to email me, talkshownerd@gmail.com. All right, I've got regular work to go do. Hey, I kept it under 40 minutes this week. If this is one of your first times listening to the show, or you haven't done so already, if you are a reader and you enjoy science fiction, I hope you'll support my nerd world and pick up your preferred copy, ebook, paperback, hardcover, or audiobook of my EMBARK science fiction space opera series. I wrote this series as a challenge to myself originally, but really because of my love of science fiction and Depeche Mode. I included just a lot of Depeche Mode themes and references, both direct and indirect, while telling an exciting science fiction space opera saga story. The first book is kind of a mashup of all the genres that I love. Those 80s love stories, disaster films, science fiction books and movies. If the world ends, who would you want by your side? That's the log line for book one. Taftgardia's answer was always fellow pilot Keitha Morrow. She just doesn't know it. Now, as an industrial catastrophe sweeps across the planet, they'll have to survive long enough for her to find out. As two rival megacorporations are on the brink of interstellar war, thousands of starships are at risk as they head for deep space, and someone has given Taft a power he never wanted to stop the conflict. Reluctantly, Taft realizes he holds the key to saving Earth's evacuees. The odds are against him, but Taft has the advantage and will bravely have to choose between protecting Keitha or risking humanity's future among the stars. If you like your science fiction filled with some romance and action, right, don't miss this fast-paced science fiction adventure. Written for adults, but great for ages 11 plus. Head on over to Amazon.com, search for Jon, Jon Justice, or mynerdworld.net to go pick up your copy. All right, I look forward to hearing from you between now and next week. shownerd@gmail.com. I hope wherever you are, you're enjoying Depeche Mode, and you are happy, you are healthy, and you are safe. Talk to you again real soon. Bye, guys.